All right, how's it going, everyone? Welcome to another episode of Grizzly's Cave. This is Grizzly Andrew. Hope everybody's doing well. Before we continue on the life of Bray Wyatt, I do want to thank again all of my subscribers, listeners, everybody. Thank you all so much. If you're new to listening to Grizzly's Cave, once this next episode is uploaded, I encourage all of y'all to check out my channel, give it a like and subscribe. Again, I'm on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon, iHeartRadio, YouTube, and Patreon. And just as a disclaimer, I will continue reading from wikipedia.org on the life of Bray Wyatt. And last episode, we finished where Randy Orton had started a feud with Bray Wyatt, but back in October of 2016, Randy Orton joined the Wyatt family. And folks, I got to tell you, that was a real head scratcher for me. And even almost 10 years later, it's still a head scratcher for me. And it's like my best friend would say, and I hope he listens to this, it just didn't make any sense. When you're booking a storyline or angle or whatever, it's got to make sense. But, anyways, so continuing on, back in November of 2016 at the Survivor Series, which for my listeners, friends, etc., that know me well, you all know that the Survivor Series pay per view has always been my favorite. Um, I've always enjoyed those traditional 4-on-4 or 5-on-5 Survivor Series elimination matches. I don't know, something about it was, it just always stood out to me. And, but yeah, that's always been my favorite. But, anyways, on November 20th, 2016, Bray Wyatt and Randy Orton, they were in a 5-on-5 Survivor Series elimination match. And if you folks will remember, around this time, they were going back to Raw versus SmackDown again. And if I'm not mistaken, at this pay per view, there were actually three different Raw versus SmackDown matches. There was the five tag teams from Raw, five tag teams from SmackDown. Then there was also the women's 5-on-5 elimination match, and then there was the men's 5-on-5 elimination match. And for SmackDown Live, Bray Wyatt, Randy Orton, let's see here, AJ Styles, who was the champion at this time, Dean Ambrose, and I'm trying to remember who the other one was. And it'll probably come back to me here in a few minutes. But they took on from Team Raw Roman Reigns, Seth Rollins, Chris Jericho, Kevin Owens, and Braun Strowman. And honestly, folks, it was a great match. Me personally, I think that should have been the main event. But unfortunately, at that pay per view, Vince had other plans, and it was Brock versus Goldberg in their return match 12 years after that god awful WrestleMania 20 match that they had. Ironically, that match only lasted about a minute 32 seconds. But, anyways, Bray Wyatt and Randy Orton were the sole survivors for Team SmackDown. And I thought to myself, okay, I can get behind this. And it was actually a pretty good ending. It got down to the final two for each team. It was Rollins and Reigns for Raw, and then Orton and Wyatt for SmackDown. And the ending of it was what I really liked about it was, let's see, Seth Rollins had went up to the top rope and he was going to deliver a frog splash to Bray Wyatt. Well, Randy Orton wound up catching him, and folks, you've seen a lot of highlight reels where Randy Orton will catch people midair and hit them with an RKO. That's what he did to Rollins, and Rollins was pinned and eliminated. And then the final final touch for this match, Roman Reigns was set to hit a spear on Bray Wyatt. Well, Orton wound up pushing Wyatt out of the way, so Orton ate that spear. Well, Bray Wyatt capitalized, hit Roman with the Sister Abigail, pinned him, and that ended the match. Like I said, I really think that should have been the main event, but, that's my opinion. So after Survivor Series, Orton and Wyatt, they started competing more in tag team matches, and they took on the team of American Alpha. And for those of you that don't know, Chad Gable, who was also known as Shorty G and now known as El Grande Americano, pound for pound, I'd say he's probably one of the best technical wrestlers out there. That's just my opinion. But I won't compare him to Kurt Angle or Bret Hart or even the late Chris Benoit. But damn good wrestler. His partner was Jason Jordan. And for those of you that don't remember Jason Jordan, they were really giving him a big singles push back in like 2017, and they were really trying to build him up as the, I hate to say it like this, but illegitimate son of Kurt Angle. But unfortunately, it just wasn't going over like it should have. As a baby face, he was getting booed out of the building. Basically, he was getting the John Cena Roman Reigns treatment, and he was getting booed all over the place. But anyways, I digress. They defeated American Alpha to become the number one contenders for the SmackDown Tag Team Championship. And so the following month, on the December 4th TLC pay per view, Bray Wyatt and Randy Orton defeated Heath Slater and Rhino to become the champions. And this would actually mark Wyatt's first title win in WWE. So, a few things on this. I was actually bummed out that Heath Slater and Rhino actually lost the tag team championship. Heath Slater, I mean, come on, he's always been over with the fans, even though he basically got used as an enhancement talent, but he was actually getting a push. And I remember at the Backlash pay per view a few months prior where him and Rhino defeated the Usos to become the new SmackDown Tag Team Champions. And um, Heath Slater was doing at this time, I've got kids, I need this job, etc. And then the fans would chant, he's got kids, and all that. But, unfortunately, all good things must come to an end. But, anyways, at the end of that match, I remember Luke Harper got into the ring with Wyatt and Orton, and Orton did something that was, I thought was pretty cool. He put both tag team championship belts on Harper. So it kind of started to seem like there was some unity in the Wyatt family for once now. So a couple of days later, Wyatt and Orton, they would retain the SmackDown Tag Team Champ. Actually, let me gear back for just a second. One other thing. Sorry, folks. I'm very scatterbrained for the first time listeners. Yes, this was Wyatt's first title reign with the company, but at this point, they're at least 2 years past due. Um, I mean, he should have had a run in 2014. He definitely should have had a run in 2015, but it never happened. It's really a shame that it took, at this point, almost 3.5 years since Bray's been on the main roster to finally get some kind of title run. So, on the December 6th episode of SmackDown Live, um, but let's see, but there is a little side note. So they retained it on the December 6th episode of SmackDown Live, but on the December 27th episode of SmackDown Live, this time it was Orton and Luke Harper, and they were using the Freebird rule. And for those of you that don't know, the Freebird rule is if you're a trio, any two members of your trio can defend the tag team titles. However, but anyways, Orton and Harper, they lost the titles to American Alpha in a four corners elimination tag team match. So this has always been my gripe with WWE for a very, very long time. I'm not big on hot potatoing championship belts. I mean, they just won it on December 4th, and then a little over 3 weeks later, they lost the tag team championship. Um, Me personally, and I'm sure there's other folks out there that would feel the same way. When you hot potato championships, it devalues the championship. And I know there for a long time they did that with the tag team championship. Excuse me. Pretty much almost every championship except the big one, they would hot potato it a lot, and it just never made any sense. Uh, so, I mentioned earlier about it started to seem like there was some unification with the Wyatt family. Well, apparently that was short lived. This actually started dissent between Harper and Orton, and they wound up facing each other on the January 24th, 2017 episode of SmackDown Live, which Orton won. And then after the match, Bray Wyatt would deliver Sister Abigail to Harper and exiling him from the group. Okay, so within the span of 2 years, Luke Harper has been, quote, set free, and now he's exiled from the group. What the fuck, guys? Come on. All right, so that following Sunday was the Royal Rumble on January 29th. Bray Wyatt entered the Royal Rumble match at number 21. He lasted until the final three. The final three was actually Bray Wyatt, Randy Orton, and shocker, Roman Reigns. And when I watched this pay per view, my first thought was, oh gosh, we know where this is going. It's you got two heels against one baby face. Baby face is going to come out on top. No, that's actually not what happened, and that really surprised me. So Reigns wound up eliminating Bray Wyatt, and then Orton would capitalize and eliminate Reigns. Now, there were a few things that stood out with this Royal Rumble match. So I'm going to name a few other names in here. So you have Brock Lesnar, and as always, he went in and destroyed people. However, when another entrant by the name of Goldberg appeared in the match, Goldberg made short work of Brock Lesnar just like he did 2 months prior at the Survivor Series. He speared Brock Lesnar, tossed him out. Well, and then another one, The Undertaker. The gong went off, the lights went out, and then when the lights came back on, Undertaker's in the center of the ring. Him and Goldberg go at it. And if I'm not mistaken, I believe Undertaker eliminated Goldberg. But the one moment in the match that got probably the biggest round of boos was when Roman Reigns eliminated The Undertaker. And this would eventually set up their match at the following WrestleMania. But, anyways, so again, Bray Wyatt has a pretty good showing at a Royal Rumble match, but he doesn't win. Okay, so where are we going to go from here? And keep in mind, Orton he could decide which championship, whether it was Raw or SmackDown, that he wanted to challenge for. So that big mystery is still up and running. Okay, so fast forward to the Elimination Chamber pay per view on February the 12th, and this was another moment where I thought to myself, this was way long overdue. So Bray Wyatt was in the Elimination Chamber match, and this was for the WWE Championship, and John Cena was the defending champion. And if you all will remember the previous month at the Royal Rumble, Cena defeated AJ Styles to win, I believe this was his 16th championship. So this actually would tie Ric Flair's record. Well, Bray Wyatt wound up winning this match. Also in the match was, like I said, John Cena and AJ Styles, The Miz, Dean Ambrose, and Baron Corbin. And this would mark Bray Wyatt's first singles title run since he's been on the main roster. I remember me and my buddies after the match where Bray Wyatt is holding the championship belt. We all were in agreement. They were This was long overdue, and again, he should have had a world title run 2014, 2015. But as always, with a lot of their wrestlers, WWE tends to drop the ball. And the sad part is it's never going to stop. So after Wyatt won this match, it started to raise the possibility of Orton possibly challenging Bray Wyatt for a match. On the following SmackDown Live episode, Wyatt successfully defended the WWE Championship in a triple threat match involving John Cena and AJ Styles, even though he suffered a pre match attack from Harper. Orton would pledge allegiance to Wyatt and refuse to face him at WrestleMania 33. However, with all snakes, vipers, whatever, you never can trust a snake. Um, this would prove to be a ruse. Orton would wind up destroying the Wyatt family compound, and then he would destroy Sister Abigail's grave 2 weeks later. And I didn't see the episode, but I remember watching the video on YouTube, and um, Bray Wyatt was fit to be tied. I mean, sold it really well. While everything's up in flames, Orton is doing his signature pose and all that. And I was like, okay, maybe this could work out. The sad part is that match did not main event WrestleMania. Um, it was a big letdown. I mean, and come to think of it, Brock and Goldberg's Universal Championship match didn't main event Mania either. It was actually main evented by Taker and Roman Reigns. Um, so, anyways, you get to the pay per view, WrestleMania pay per view on April the 2nd. Bray Wyatt does the job for Randy Orton, and Wyatt's reign ended at 49 days. Oh, WWE, what the fuck, y'all? Um, the match was actually good. There was some special effects when Randy Orton was walking down to the ramp. On the ramp, there was a visual effect of a snake slithering down the ramp wherever Orton was stepping at. I thought that was pretty cool. And there was a couple of instances during Orton and Wyatt's match. They both would be on the mat, and you would see a camera directly above the ring, and there would be a visual effect of like maggots and worms and stuff. Horror movie type stuff. And I mean, it added a little bit more to the match, but um, nothing to really write home about. I mean, it wasn't, Hart and Michaels at WrestleMania 12 or Steamboat and Savage at WrestleMania 3. I mean, it was nothing like that. Or both of Michaels and Taker's WrestleMania matches. But I mean, it was a good match. I just thought it was shit um, that Wyatt's reign ended, so soon. Well, fast forward to April the 10th. Bray Wyatt wound up getting moved to the Raw brand as part of the quote unquote superstar shakeup, or back then it was the draft lottery, back in the 2000s and all that. Um, he was supposed to get a rematch for the title at the April 30th Payback pay per view. It was going to be a House of Horrors match. However, this was changed to a non title match. Um, Basically, the House of Horrors match, it was another one of those cinema style matches. They basically started at the remains of the Wyatt compound, and it was, kind of like, I guess you would say, like the Boiler Room Brawl between Taker and Mankind at the '96 SummerSlam. Basically, you start there and then you end, I guess you end in the ring. Well, at one point, they both wound up leaving the scene of the House of Horrors match. The pay per view continues on with other matches. Well, eventually they wind up making their way back to the arena, and then they finish the match there. Bray Wyatt would get a little bit of redemption and would defeat Orton in the match, but this was due to the returning Jinder Mahal interfering in the match, and this would eventually end their feud. And speaking of Jinder Mahal, folks, remember how I talked about hot potato and championships? Well, that's basically what wound up happening the following month when Randy Orton dropped the belt to Jinder Mahal, and probably one of the most shocking upsets in WWE history. But anyways, that's a discussion for another time. Um, I don't know, folks. It's just it was reasons like this that eventually led me to not watching WWE as religiously anymore, and ultimately the biggest reason I quit watching is just because they dropped the ball with Braun Strowman, and but it was also things like this that led me to saying the hell with it. But it is what it is. All right, so moving forward, where do we go from here? So at the June 4th Extreme Rules pay per view, Bray Wyatt was in a number one contender fatal five-way match for the Universal Championship. Um, Unfortunately, he lost this match. The match was ultimately won by Samoa Joe. Don't really remember much about the match, to be quite honest with you. It's sad to say. Um, later on, Seth Rollins would be unveiled on the cover of the WWE 2K18 game. So then Bray Wyatt and him would start a feud, and they had a match at the Great Balls of Fire pay per view on July 9th. And then again, um, they would have I'm sorry, let me backtrack. Wyatt would defeat Rollins at Great Balls of Fire, and then the next night on Raw. And I gotta say, those two could have some good matches. Um, I mean, obviously Seth Rollins, went on to really great things with WWE. Very happy for him. It just sucks that Bray Wyatt didn't get that same rub, I guess. After this feud, Bray Wyatt would start a feud with Finn Balor, and this would result in a match between the two at SummerSlam, which Balor won under his Demon King persona. And folks, quite honestly, I thought it was a good match. And it's really good that Balor donned the Demon King persona. I've always been a big fan of the Demon King, especially with his entrance, his get up and everything. Um, and with Bray Wyatt's gimmick and stuff, it worked well. They would have a rematch at the No Mercy pay per view on September 24th. Wyatt would lose again to Balor. Again, another good match between the two. They were set to have a third match at the October 22nd TLC pay per view. However, and I do remember this, Bray Wyatt was unable to compete due to an illness concern, and he was replaced by AJ Styles. Balor would again don the Demon King gimmick for this match. And folks, I got to tell you, that was a fucking incredible match. Finn Balor, AJ Styles, former Bullet Club members from New Japan Pro Wrestling, just an amazing match. Um, Unfortunately, because Bray wasn't was unable to compete in the match. This kind of quietly ended their feud. Um, However, he would return on the November 13th episode of Raw, and he would face Jason Jordan in a losing effort. Um, okay. I know Jason Jordan had to step away from the ring due to injury and stuff and all that. And, it's really sad because he had a lot of potential and he was a great wrestler. Um, and I know they're really trying to at this time, they're really trying to build him up as a main event superstar babyface. Um, but it just really started to seem like Bray Wyatt was getting shit on. And I, I got to quote, I got to quote my best friend here. It just didn't make any sense. Um, Moving on into November, Bray Wyatt would begin a feud with Matt Hardy. And for those of you that remember, the Hardy Boys would return to WWE at WrestleMania 33 in a tag team. Well, it was a tag team championship ladder match, and they wound up winning. And it was so awesome seeing them back, and Hardy was still you know looking like broken Matt Hardy and all that from TNA. This feud would actually resurrect the broken gimmick. The problem is though, okay, so let me get back here. So they did have remember them had they had a match on Raw, and Matt Hardy's not broken Matt Hardy. Uh, I've never understood it. Never understood it with Vince. Back in the good old territory days, I mean, guys could come in with their gimmick and stuff that they, got over in other territories, and they could compete on Vince's programming. But as time went on, Vince didn't want to use a wrestler's gimmick that got over somewhere else. He wanted to recreate it or taint it, whatever you want to say. And instead of broken Matt Hardy, he was called woken Matt Hardy. And don't get me wrong, folks, it was great that, he was able to bring that gimmick, but I felt Vince tainted it badly. But it might still be on YouTube. Look up Woken Matt Hardy, Bray Wyatt, and the exchanges that they had with their little vignette interview promos and stuff. It was actually pretty awesome. Um, they did have a match at the Raw 25-year anniversary. It was on January 22nd, 2018. And I actually had this recorded on when I had DirecTV at the time. And so yeah, folks, I had Raw recorded, SmackDown recorded, and I was recording New Japan Pro Wrestling. And so for this event, they actually had some of the stars on. I forget the arena that it was at, and then they had the others right across the street at the Manhattan Center. For those of you that don't know, that's where WWE would have Monday Night Raw when that first made it to the airwaves. And the match was really short. I mean, it was like it might have hit 5 minutes, and it almost just seemed like a good old fashioned squash match. And Bray Wyatt would win. Um, but I'm really curious to see where this goes. So on January 28th, 2018, at the Royal Rumble, Bray Wyatt entered in at number 8. I don't remember I really don't remember like where at in the match he got eliminated, but I do remember him and Hardy eliminated each other simultaneously. So obviously they're going to keep this storyline going, which is good. Um, so they had a rematch at the Elimination Chamber pay per view on February 25th. Thank God this match lasted a lot longer than that Raw 25 match. And it was a good match. And there was there were some instances in some other matches that they had leading up to this where Matt Hart, like Bray Wyatt, would be standing in the corner, just kind of confused and stuff, and then Matt Hardy would look to the crowd and he would do, and you folks will know what I'm talking about. He would do his wonderful, and he'd spread his arms out, start clapping and stuff, and say wonderful again and all that, and the crowd would get into it, and Bray Wyatt's just looking around, all confused, like where the hell am I at, and all. But yeah, Matt Hardy would gets his comeuppance against Bray Wyatt in this match. Um, now, about almost a month later, they had another match, and this was on Raw, and it was an Ultimate Deletion match. Um, so this was very similar to the match that Broken Matt Hardy and Brother Nero Jeff Hardy had in TNA back in the summer of 2016. Very similar. Um, what didn't make sense was is that this should have been at WrestleMania. I mean, this could have been aired for WrestleMania. Yes, it was a cinema style match, but it should have been on pay per view. I mean, they had the Wyatts versus the New Day in a cinema style match. No, actually, I think that might have been on a Raw, but I want to say it was a pay per view. But anyways, they had the House of Horrors match a year before at the Payback pay per view with him and Orton. I mean, they could have done this for Wyatt and Hardy at that WrestleMania, but they didn't. Shocker. But that match, it was actually an interesting match to watch. Um, let's see, I cannot remember the name of the gardener. Um, but he appears just out of the blue during the match. I want to say he was underneath like a tractor or a truck or whatever. And he's looking up and he's singing. He's got the whole world in his hands. And then Jeff Hardy shows up looking like Brother Nero from TNA. He appears next to Wyatt singing, he's got the whole world in his hands. Kind of reverse from when Wyatt would sing that to John Cena a few years earlier. And ultimately, the match ended when Matt Hardy threw Bray Wyatt into the lake of reincarnation, as he called it, and then Bray Wyatt would disappear. Uh, Speaking of WrestleMania, so at WrestleMania 34 on April the 8th, during the Andre the Giant Memorial Battle Royal, Woken Matt Hardy would win the match, but Bray Wyatt returned and actually helped save Hardy, and this would be Bray Wyatt's official face turn. And I do remember he got a big ovation with that. And honestly, I think the crowd had been wanting this to happen for a very, very long time. And I mean, it could have worked if they just kept it going, for a while. Um, Wyatt and Hardy would form a tag team, and they were called the Deleters of Worlds. And I fucking love that because Bray Wyatt at one point called himself the Eater of Worlds. I guess he was the modern day Galactus. For all you Marvel fans out there, you'll get the reference. Um, then and Matt Hardy, he always did the delete, delete, delete. They would wind up winning the vacant Raw Tag Team Championship on April the 27th at the Greatest Royal Rumble, and they would defeat the team of Cesaro and Sheamus, and they were ultimately called the Bar. Um, Cesaro, pound for pound, I would say he's one of the strongest wrestlers out there. He may not look it, but the guy is strong as a bull and was a damn good wrestler. And he's another one that WWE dropped the ball on. Again, that's a conversation for another day. At the following pay per view, July 15th, Extreme Rules, they would lose. Unfortunately, the Deleters of Worlds would lose the titles to the B team. And I loved this team. It was Bray Wyatt's younger brother, Bo Dallas, and Curtis Axel. Um, it didn't make sense for them to drop the belt so soon, but folks, again, you know WWE, they love to hot potato tag team championship belts. But with that said, I was happy for Bo Dallas and Curtis Axel. I mean, they've been getting jobbed out left and right, and I'm glad they got a run. Um, on the July 23rd episode of Raw, they did have a rematch against the B team. However, they were unsuccessful. Um, but shortly after this, Hardy would take time off to heal his injuries, and this would unfortunately split up the team. Um, God Almighty. WWE would disband the team because they grew tired of Hardy and Wyatt pitching several ideas for their characters. Okay, y'all do know I'm a Christian man and I'm not perfect by no means, but WWE, fuck you. In this instance, I gotta say fuck you. Um, they're great gimmicks, characters, and they're great wrestlers. And you're gonna grow tired of them pitching ideas for their characters. That's bullshit. I guarantee it. If the late Hulk Hogan, God rest his soul, was still alive, I bet y'all would be perfectly fine with his ideas. If the late Ultimate Warrior, God rest his soul, if he was pitching several ideas, y'all would not have an issue with that. But that's the thing. They just really seem to pick and choose. And it's sad because that tag team would have been if they would have had a longer run and stuff, it would have been real. Ugh, sorry, folks, a little tongue tied here. It would have been ultimately successful, but again, what do you expect? And again, it's reasons like this that ultimately led me to not watch WWE hardly ever. I mean, I catch reels and matches on YouTube from time to time, but this is actually the first I've heard about this with why the team was ultimately disbanded. Um, sorry, I can't really rely on a team of quote unquote writers or a board of directors or whatever you want to call them. I'm sorry. I mean, you got to let these wrestlers get over themselves and not rely on you to get them over. Um, because if they can get over with the fans, that's more sales on your merch, more tickets bought, etc., etc. But anyways, I digress. Well, folks, I think I'm gonna end it there. Um, we will pick up on the next episode. We'll be talking about the Fiend and one of my favorite things, the Firefly Funhouse. All right, well, folks, before I forget, I haven't really mentioned it on the last couple of episodes, but if you would be interested in sponsoring Grizzly's Cave, you can email me at grizzliescave@yahoo.com. And if you have good experiences from wrestling events you've went to that you would like read aloud on an episode, you can email that as well to grizzliescave@yahoo.com. And again, I should have this uploaded pretty soon. Please give it a like and a subscribe. And again, thank you to everybody that takes time out to listen to the episodes. It's liked, subscribed. Folks, thank you so much. Until next time, this is Grizzly Andrew signing off, saying take care and God bless.